Warning: the Hayes Nation may stimulate personal growth and prosperity. Participation is strongly advised.
Well, today on the show, it is episode number 1, and let me be the first to welcome you to the Hayes Nation. In our first segment, we're just going to cover the core tenets of this show: faith, freedom, and prosperity. You're not going to want to miss it. And then in the second segment today, what you say is what you get. You're going to want to stick around for that. All that and more, and it starts right now. Okay, well, welcome to the George Hayes Radio Podcast and home of the Hayes Nation. I am so happy to be here. This is episode number 1. We're going to work through this. This is a brand new show. This is a new format. This is new for me. Let me just say first, I would love to hear from you. If you are interested in living a life of faith, freedom, and prosperity, or let's just say your career or goal oriented, and you're struggling a little bit, you're not sure what to do next, or perhaps you're just sitting on the sidelines and you've done nothing. You're stuck. You think that there is no way out. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. I want to hear that story too. And when you send me messages, do me a favor. Give me just like 1 or 2 things that you're trying to do to resolve and move forward. And you can send those to georgehayes@usa.com, georgehayes@usa.com. I want to hear from you. We also want to see your comments. The video portion of the show is on YouTube, so feel free to leave comments there. And if you want to reach me, I'm only on one social media platform, and that is X. You can find me at Real George Hayes on X. That's Real George Hayes on X. And last but not least, go to hayesnation.com. That is the home of this show. You'll join a community of like-minded people or individuals who believe in faith, freedom, and prosperity. You'll find all episodes of the show are located there, plus tools and information to help you on your journey to living a life of prosperity. You'll also find others that you can encourage and support who want to build a life of purpose and prosperity. It's a great place to go. Help support it. Let's build up this community of people who want to achieve. Now, a couple of housekeeping notes. We're broadcasting here from the Bama One podcast studio in the great state of Alabama. And this is a short form podcast designed to be only 45 minutes to an hour per episode, usually a couple of topics. We'll have some guests from time to time. We want to get you information, get you encouraged, get you built up. We'll choose topics that hopefully will help make you think about the direction you're going and build up a life of prosperity. And again, very quick, we want to get the information in and get you on your busy day. All right, so with all that said, here we are in episode number 1. And let me just start with this. I want to acknowledge that it's confusing and difficult in the current financial climate that we live in. I understand that housing prices are high, especially in the big cities, California, New York, Florida. There's just places where housing is extremely high, and I know that I'm familiar with all the reasons as to why. A lot of people think what is causing it. I don't want to get into that in this particular episode. Just know that I understand the real estate market pretty well, and there are ways to still get around that. There are still ways to get yourself into your first property. It just takes some planning, and you just got to kind of know the system. And you got to be willing to make some hard choices. As far as the general economy, gas is down right now. I think we're at $2.83 a gallon nationwide. California is still absolutely ridiculous, way over $4. But like here in Alabama, we can find gas for under $2.40 a gallon. And so with gas prices going down, that definitely will help the overall economy. But again, people are still struggling. So how do we overcome that? We're going to talk about that in great detail on this show. We'll discuss many, many things on this show. And just let me give you an idea of where we'll be going. We will talk about faith and spiritual growth. We'll talk about work and employment, family and relationships, financial planning, investing and wealth building, health and well-being, education and skill development. We'll talk about that a lot. Entrepreneurship in business, stewardship in giving, and much, much more. There's a lot to cover here. Now, the core tenets of the show, faith, freedom, and prosperity. Let me just tell you right now, from my perspective, I give all the glory to God for everything in my life. When things are going great, it's praise the Lord. When things aren't going so great, it's praise the Lord. It's a steadfast belief that He's in control. I'm walking the path that He wants me on. And that is that's the lens through how I see things. Now, we'll have a lot of general conversations here. It's not going to be a lot of Bible verses, but I am going to give you verses that do support my positions. But, conversely, I will also take a look at the secular viewpoint and make comparison. So I hope that this will be helpful to many of you, because there's a lot of people who are struggling and they're looking for purpose. And I think I can help you get there. Excuse me. Now, why prosperity and why faith? Why? Well, my short version of it is, let God carry the load. You're carrying this giant burden on your shoulder. You're trying to figure out what it is that you can do to get ahead. Maybe you went to college and you got a degree and you can't find a job. Okay? There's a lot of reasons why that happens, mainly because the education system fails a lot of our youth in this country, because we have this kind of cookie cutter idea, one size fits all. Let's just have everybody go to college, right? That's the most important thing. Lots of parents say that. Well, my kids are going to go to college. But do they really take the time to plan out what that roadmap looks like beyond getting past the testing and getting into the school you want and getting in and taking the classes that you want for whatever degree it is you decided to go after? And what I mean by that is what kind of money can you make with that degree? What kind of jobs are out there? What does that job market look like? So if you're going to go to school, for an extended education and spend 4 years at a university, and then you get out, what are your options? Who's going to hire you? And I'm going to take it one step further, because when you plan ahead, when you try to see, it's like a game of chess. When you try to look 2 and 3 and 4 steps ahead, what is it going to pay 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now? Is it a true career path? And many, many people have fallen victim to this. Look, for the longest time, we were told, learn to code, learn to code, learn to code. Now we have lots of coders, but no jobs for coders. So in planning that forward progress in that degree, when looking at, what classes you're going to take or what type of degree you're going to go after, are there alternatives? In other words, if you're chasing a certain industry, will your degree work if you have to take a turn and go a different direction? We'll raise all these questions and much more. So back to prosperity, okay? I will do that. I will kind of weave in and out as I go. This is just kind of how I think things through. So back to prosperity. I put my faith in God. Praise the Lord. I let Him set the path for me. Now, prosperity through faith in God ultimately exists so His people can be a blessing to others. God increases individuals not merely for personal comfort, but so they can meet the needs, fund good works, and advance His mission. So that's why prosperity is a big, big part for me. Okay? Now, does God want you to prosper? Of course He wants you to prosper. Philippians 4:19, and my God will supply every need of yours according to His riches and glory in Christ Jesus. And what does that mean? This encourages us to trust in God's provision. Now, let's set that aside. There are things that we all have to do if we want our lives to improve and if we want to be on a true path to prosperity. And I'm going to get to more on prosperity here in a second. But there are some things we need to do. We need to be better with our family. We need to be better husbands, better wives, mothers, daughters, sons, and friends. This is very important to living a life of prosperity. Now, I want to talk about what prosperity means, okay? Because prosperity is a lot of different things, okay? It's not just financial gain, okay? It's not wealth, okay? It's not being rich. That's not what I'm talking about when I talk about prosperity. Having financial prosperity is a great thing, and that's part of who we are. It's how we live. That's our society that we live in. But there's also spiritual prosperity, building a better relationship with God, okay? There is physical prosperity, especially people who are suffering physically. To have a better life and to feel better, that can be prosperous. So prosperity can cover many, many angles of our life. And so this isn't just about money, okay? I want to make that very, very, very clear. And before I move on, I want to make sure I make this next point clear. This is not a show about politics. I don't care about politics when we're talking about faith, freedom, and prosperity. The only time politics will come into play, and if I read a news story or engage in a conversation that's happening, it will only be one that directly affects us financially. That could potentially hurt you. I'll give you an example. Congress is trying to pass some bill that is going to increase your tax on your real estate holdings by X percent. Then I would probably want to talk about that, but not in terms of red team versus blue team or anything like that, whether or not it's good or bad, and what are we going to do about it. That's as far as I'm going to go with the politics. If you enjoy politics and you want to, if you want to have those conversations, there are tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of talking heads out there that's all they do is talk politics all day. You can go find those channels and you can have fun with that. Okay. Now, one of the things, there are some things, well, actually, you know what? I want to make something clear. Some of my core topics and core themes are all going to evolve around attitude. Okay, it's gonna, your attitude towards success. I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about planning. You need to plan, okay? Individual choices. I'm going to talk a lot about that. Not what I want, but what I need. That's going to come up a lot because we live in this current social environment where it's gimme, 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 gimme. Gimme, 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 gimme. I got to have that. Every shiny new thing, I've got to have it. I've got to have the latest and greatest. No, you don't. You don't. You don't have to have everything. In fact, if you want to build a true life of prosperity, you need to start learning how to do things like savings, and then learn how to invest. Those are the things that are going to build a life of prosperity. And then for those of you who think that somehow culturally the whole thing is going to change the current environment we find ourselves in, the economy I'm talking about, is going to change from one where you don't work and the government rains checks down on you and everybody lives happily ever after. That's just simply not going to happen. Now, if you're happy living on a small, tiny check that comes from the government, and I'm not talking about people who are disabled or people that actually qualify and need those programs. I'm talking about the rest of those people out there, the ones who take advantage of it and who are, they're just simply comfortable playing video games on the couch, getting a small check, buying their drugs or whatever it is that they do, and then that's their existence. Now, I want to help those people too, and if you're one of those people and you happen to catch this show, stick around, because maybe we can get you out of that mode. Everyone has purpose in God's eyes. And there's more to your life than just sitting around waiting for somebody else to fix it. That's another thing that I'm going to talk about is personal accountability. Now, it's not fashionable. But right now, actually, on my board, it says, welcome to the revolution. Because the revolution now is you're going to have to work hard in order to get ahead. And that's kind of gone out the window because, that's old fashioned and, that may have worked for, baby boomers or for this generation or that generation. No, I'm sorry. That has worked for every generation. And yeah, I'm going to say things like pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And I know a lot of you don't like it. And to be honest with you, I don't care because I'm going to tell you from personal experience that the only thing that got me across the finish line, I retired at age 58. And no, I'm not some huge multi-millionaire guru, and I'm not going to sell you green drinks and tell you to, drink this green thing in the morning and meditate 3 or 4 times a day or anything like that. But you're going to have to learn that it takes discipline, endurance, determination, and it takes grit, real good old-fashioned grit, to build a life of prosperity. And look, the younger you are, the ones watching this show, the younger you are, the sooner you start, the better. That's going to be my most difficult audience to reach. And I'm going to tell you why. Because when you're in your 20s and your early 30s, you just think you're going to live forever and you can procrastinate and put things off, but it catches up to you. And the sooner you learn some basic disciplines in actual monthly budget planning, having a 2-year plan, a 5-year plan, learning how to save, where to save your money, learning how to invest, until you start doing those things, you are on the losing end of the equation because you're living paycheck to paycheck. You're buying every shiny thing you need. And it's not going to work out until you change. Now, let's talk about distractions, okay? Because this is another thing that I'm going to talk a lot about, is all of the distractions. Now, look, I sift through some social media. I sift through headlines. I kind of look to see what people are talking about. I want to understand where the current culture is. But I do it mainly for research purposes so that I can be on top when I'm talking in this show. But here's the thing. If you're spending hours and hours every day and all you're doing is searching through this little device, that's all you're doing, 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, some people 8 hours, 10 hours, just scrolling and flipping and scrolling and flipping. That is distracting you from your mission, which your mission should be building a life of faith, freedom, and prosperity. I don't know how else to put it. The more time you're on that little machine, flipping and scrolling and flipping and scrolling, the more time you're losing and where you could be educating yourself in an area where you're weak. And if you don't understand finances, and let me just back up here because I have a note here, okay? I want you to hear this, okay? Only a minority, 22.7% of U.S. high school graduates get required personal finance classes before graduation. The majority of American students leave high school without a structured, required exposure to personal finance. Okay? So they, basically budgeting, credit, debt, investing, basic economic understanding are left to chance or completely left undone. Now that is just absolutely crazy. 22%, we'll call it 22.7. 23% of people who walk away from high school are financially illiterate. Now, my guess is the majority of people who will pick up my show and watch it are going to be, there's going to be a good chunk, I wouldn't say a majority, there's going to be a chunk of people that are in that category that are financially illiterate. Now, I'm not here to teach you finances 101. We will talk a lot about finances, but what I will be doing is encouraging you to learn more on your own. You have to study. let's just say, okay, I'll make the challenge right now. If you're not saving any money, you've got to find some way to save some money. And I don't care what it is, $10 a week, $100 a week, whatever the number is, right now, make the determination that you are going to start saving money. Well, and let me just play both sides here, okay? Well, George, I can't do that. I can't afford to save money. And I hear that a lot. And here's my response to you. You can't afford not to, because you're in a vicious cycle where the money comes in, the money goes out, the money comes in, the money goes out. You're doing nothing to change that dynamic so that you can begin to move forward. So somewhere in there, the money comes in, a little bit's got to be peeled off and it's got to be put aside, and you can't touch it. And we're just going to start there. Once you learn how to save, then you can learn how to invest. And again, we'll cover all of this stuff segment by segment, show by show over time, okay? And depending on what feedback I get, we'll focus on some areas more than others, okay? Now, I did talk about, focusing in on individual choices, okay? Let me tell you something right now. Somebody once told me this a long time ago, and maybe you've heard it, right? If you want to live like rich people do, you need to start thinking like rich people do. What are they doing with their money that's different than what you do with your money? Okay? And we'll get deep into that conversation. Trust me. Okay? Another thing that we need to do is start surrounding ourselves with the right people. This one is extremely important. Okay? If your social network is a group of you and you're all struggling, this is not the group that you need to be getting advice from on how to get out of your own struggle. You need to find someone above and outside of that circle. It's called a mentor. You need to find someone. For me, it all began in my 30s. Up until, through my teens and my 20s, all I did was earn and spend. Earn and spend, earn and spend, earn and spend. And trust me, I came from very humble beginnings. Zero, nothing. If you had met me when I was a teenager, you would have written me off. This guy's never going to make it. He's got no chance. But I discovered something when I met my first mentor. And this person was successful. Somebody I worked for. And it just dawned on me one day, like, I want to be that person. How do I get there? And we started having conversations. And this person was kind enough to mentor me and help move things along for my life. And, gave me, reading material I should be reading and things that I should be doing in my life. Stuff like I said, I'm going to talk a lot about budget, planning, that kind of stuff, right? So surrounding yourself with the right people is extremely important. I talked about tuning out the noise. Again, got to put the gadgets down. I am also pro trades, okay? I don't think college is for everyone. In fact, I did not get a college degree. I took college classes, but I was a high school graduate, and I started off in the trades. And I worked my way up. And instead of getting a college degree, what I did was I took the classes and the courses, and I got the credentials and the licenses that I needed to move forward in the industry I was in, which was telecommunications industry, specifically infrastructure, building, fiber optic, old cable plant, phone plant, right? And I'm talking about telephone poles, digging up streets, that type of stuff. That was the industry that I was in. And my education came from getting direction from people above me, mentors that I looked up to, giving me the advice, doing the work that I needed to do to climb the ladder. So I am very much pro-trades. I'm not anti-college because, look, we need engineers, okay? And we certainly need our engineers to be very well trained. Now, finally, I've mentioned it, but I'm going to mention it again. Savings and investing. If you don't save, you can't invest. And I'm kind of like a broken record. Remember I told you back in the beginning, I kind of weave, right? But it's important that we get this through, right? This whole concept of just earn and spend is why so many people are in trouble. You got high credit card debt, right? You can't buy a house because, well, you need a lot of money to put down on a house right now. So I'm not sure what happens. So yeah, let's just buy a new car. That doesn't make sense to me. To me, a vehicle, just as a side note, a vehicle to me is a tool. Gets me from point A to point B. I don't care what it looks like, as long as it's operationally, it functions operationally correct, and it's safe. Gets me from point A to point B. It doesn't need to be extravagant. So we need to learn how to save and stop spending money so that we can get to the point where we learn how to invest. Okay? So you kind of see where my brain is here. I mean, the biggest point I've got to get across to my audience is that it's not the world around you that's got to change. It's you that has got to change. Now again, I put my faith in God, okay? I don't put my faith in government or some politician. Politicians will always tell you that, they're going to make life better for you. Just vote for me and I'm going to make your life better. And raise your hands, if, these politicians have actually made your life better. Go ahead, raise your hand. I guarantee there's not very many hands being raised. It's because they don't. Politicians are in it for power. They're in it for their own prestige. They have their own working plan. I mean, look at how rich some people in Congress get these days. Okay? That's a business model. That's not just about going there to represent people anymore. That's going there so that they can get involved in whatever insider trading or whatever it is that they do and the deals that they make to get that great, hook up with whatever, companies that they're working with, whatever lobbyists they're working with, so that they can go on and enrich themselves. So we don't look to man, especially government, as the source for our prosperity. We look to God and we praise Him and we pray and we let Him set the path, and then we do the work. It's important to understand this part, okay? You have to do the work. No one is going to have, especially financial prosperity, if they don't put work into it. No one. Just doesn't work that way. Now stick around, because what's coming out of your mouth is hurting you. Trust me, you're going to want to hear this. I'll be right back.
You're listening to the George Hayes Radio Podcast.
I want to take a moment to talk about something important, and that is the blueprint to success. A lot of people think it's some great secret, or that success is reserved for the lucky few. Let me be clear, it's not about luck. It is about the choices you make every single day. Are you investing in yourself? Are you surrounding yourself with the right people? Are you taking action even when it feels uncomfortable? That is what success looks like. Showing up, doing the work, and staying focused on your goals. That's why the George Hayes Radio Podcast exists. We're here to give you the tools and motivation to take that next step, no matter what that might be. So here's what I want you to do. First, hit that subscribe button. Second, go to HayesNation.com to join a community of people just like you, folks who know that success doesn't happen by accident. And finally, share this episode with someone who needs to hear this message. Keep doing the work. Stay focused. Surround yourself with the right people, and your success story will happen.
Hayes. The George Hayes Radio Podcast wants to hear from you. Tell us what motivates you, or describe that obstacle standing in your way. You could be featured on an upcoming episode. Send your story via email to georgehayes@usa.com. That's georgehayes@usa.com.
All right, I'm George Hayes. We're back here, and this is segment 2 of episode number 1. Things are moving right along here. So this subject here today, this is a very specific topic. And, as I said in the beginning, this is a short form podcast. We're just going to get the information in, get the information out, try to encourage you. That's really my main goal. Now, I think I mentioned earlier that I actually retired at 58. And what that means is I just simply stopped working for money, and I'm allowing my investments to work for me. And it's not a lavish lifestyle or anything like that. In fact, I live a very simple life. But one of the things that I enjoy is that I'm able to go and do the things that I want to do with my wife. She has things that she likes to do. I have, hunting and fishing and things like that I like to do. And I'm able to focus on that. And more importantly, I've wanted to do this for a long time. I've wanted to reach out and help people. Now, again, if you need to reach out to me, if you'd like to reach out to me, it's georgehayes@usa.com, georgehayes@usa.com. I want to hear your story. Don't forget, whatever your story is, don't just give me what's going on and how tough it is. Tell me something about what you're doing to try to make it better, okay? And obviously, I'll answer questions. And comments always welcome on YouTube at the George Hayes Radio Podcast. You can leave those comments there. And then if you want to follow me, I'm on X. It's the only social media platform I'm on, and that is @RealGeorgeHayes. And last but not least, I have to say this every time I start a segment. go to HayesNation.com. This is really important because I'm trying to help build a community for you where people who have questions, and we'll find strong people out there who might be, well versed in one subject and others in another subject, and we put them together and we allow people to communicate with each other and have discussions, and hopefully we start lifting everybody up. And these questions and these comments that you can leave at HayesNation.com can be anything. Faith, freedom, prosperity, it doesn't matter. If you go there and check it out. Plus, you have all of the entire library of the show will be there. And trust me, I will be putting tools up all the time to help you plan to become a better planner, a better goal setter, book recommendations, all kinds of great stuff at HayesNation.com. Okay, so now, I entitled this segment, "What You Say Is What You Get." And I teased it earlier by saying that what you're saying, what's coming out of your mouth is hurting you. And when I start to explain this to you and I start to go through this, you're going to start saying, "Oh my, I do that all the time." Or, "Oh my wife does that all the time." "Oh, that guy or gal at work, they do it all the time." Okay? And this is very important because not only does the Bible teach us not to be negative in our lives, but the secular world teaches us that too. I personally think they just simply copied it from the Bible, because when you look at the secular studies, the Bible's been around a lot longer. That's just my opinion. So let me give you an idea, and let me get you started so that you understand what I'm talking about. Have you ever said, "Oh, I am totally screwed"? You ever said that? Or how about, "Oh man, nothing ever works out for me"? Or figures, "This always happens to me." One of my favorites, "Why do I even bother?" Or, "That's just my luck." Or, "I can't catch a break." Maybe you say, "I'm probably going to mess this up too." Right? Another favorite, "Well, that's the story of my life." I'm talking about whenever you're presented with an issue in your life, you're just simply trying to go to work and you get a flat tire, or you're just having a bad day, right? These are the things that come out of our mouth, okay? And people will say stuff like, "Well, I'm not good enough for this." Especially when it comes to, say, planning and finance and saving and learning how to invest, right? "Well, I'm just not good enough for this." Or, "This is just who I am." Another one I like, "It never fails, something always goes wrong." Now you're starting to see what I'm talking about here? All this negativity that's coming out of your mouth is having a direct impact on your life. What you say is what you get. You bring this on yourself. You program your brain to believe that, "Well, I'm screwed. That's it." And your whole demeanor changes, and how you process a solution is affected by that. Now, my wife and I challenge each other on this all the time, because I still slip up. Every now and then something will happen and something will come out of my mouth that shouldn't come out of my mouth. And she'll catch me. She'll remind me. She's much better. I don't think in 5 years I've caught her once. How about this one? "What's the point? It won't matter anyway." And I'm sure you've got a bunch of them. And if you've got a bunch of them, throw them up in the comments. I'd love to see them. I'd love to see what you guys come up with. But we all do it to a certain degree. Some of us do it way more than others, and none of us should be doing it at all. Because what you say does have an impact on your outcomes. Okay? So now remember I told you that I would give you, a secular worldview and a biblical worldview point of view when it comes to this subject. So let's start off in the secular world, okay? Let's start with the self-fulfilling prophecy. Now, in a landmark 1948 paper, sociologist Robert Merton described something he called as the self-fulfilling prophecy. He found that when people speak a belief with confidence, even a wrong one, they start behaving in ways that make it true. It's like announcing the future before it happens, and then unconsciously building the bridge to get there. In other words, the moment you speak the expectation, you start living the expectation. Now, what does the Bible have to say? Proverbs 6:2. You have been trapped by what you said, ensnared by the words of your mouth. Which basically means your speech can lock you up or it can set you free. It's that simple. Now let's just keep going, okay? Secular world point of view, self-efficacy and verbal encouragement. Psychologist Albert Bandura, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, spent decades studying what he called self-efficacy. This is the belief that you can do something. One of the strongest predictors, what are one of the strongest predictors of that belief? That the words people speak to themselves and hear from others. His research showed that verbal persuasion, simple statements like, you've got this, or you can handle this, boost persistence, problem solving, and success. The voice in your head isn't background noise. It's the coach calling the plays. Okay? So that's self-efficacy. I don't know why I'm struggling with that word. Self-efficacy and verbal encouragement. Now, conversely, what does the Bible say? Proverbs 18:21. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its fruit. Now here in the book of Proverbs, there's a line that cuts right to the heart of human behavior. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. It's not poetry. It's a warning that what comes out of your mouth can build your world or burn it down. Your words aren't passive, they're loaded, and they deliver exactly what you send out. Your words don't just describe your life, they produce fruit you will eventually eat. Oh boy, there's a couple more. Let's just do a couple more, and so I want to make sure I just drill this point home. Okay. In a massive 2011 meta-analysis, sports psychologists looked at athletes across dozens of studies. They found that targeted self-talk, short phrases spoken during training or competition improve performance in strength, endurance, and skill-based tasks. The athletes who talked to themselves with purpose simply performed better. It's not superstition. It was performance engineering through language. Now, I personally have an example of this, okay? I played a lot of ice hockey over my lifetime. And I would spend probably a good 5 to 10 minutes in the locker room, got all your gear on, Game's going to start here pretty soon. Guys are kind of talking in the locker room. But I would take 5 to 10 minutes and I would sit back and I would close my eyes and I would try to visualize what I was going to do when I got the puck. My particular position, what I was required to do, and how I was going to handle myself. And it made a huge difference because it became second nature. As soon as I got the puck, I knew exactly what I was going to do. Didn't always work out, but again, it was that premeditation, that pre-thought, that positive, okay, this is what I'm going to do when it happens, and make it happen. Now, let's go back to the Bible. Another Proverbs, this time 12:14. From the fruit of their lips, people are filled with good things, and the work of their hands brings them reward. Now, what does this mean? Your mouth and your hands work together. Your lips produce fruit that determines the quality of what fills your life. Okay? It paints a simple picture. Your words plant seeds, and eventually you eat what you planted. If your mouth is full of bitterness, that's the harvest that's coming. But if you speak with wisdom and direction, that's the meal your future self gets to enjoy. And look, I've got lots of these, and I can go on and on and on and on with these. But I want to focus here for a moment on the bigger picture here. This is something that we all have to practice. If you want your life to be better, and now let's just say, I'm not picking on anyone. Let's just say that you work in one of these big box retailers. And when you look at, year over year, the pay increases that you're going to earn, say, over the next 10 years, and you really take an honest look at it and you say to yourself, man, in 10 years, I'm really not going to be anywhere. I can barely save money now, or I can't save money now. So even if they gave me a 2 or 3% increase every year, I'm still going to be in the same place I was today. And honestly, that's depressing and dejecting. None of us want to be in that place. So you start saying things like, well, that's my life. Or, well, I guess, this is the world that I was cut out to be, or this is what I was cut out to be in the world. Or, boy, there's, nothing I can do about it. That's, it's the only job around. It's the only thing I can do. Well, that is going to be your future. But if you want out of that, say, job, that big box job, what are you willing to do to make that happen? Well, first of all, positive speak is absolutely going to help. Saying things like, well, this is just a transition job because I'm moving on to something much bigger, okay? That would be a good start. But then you also have to back it up with a plan. And in the first segment, I talked about, look, I challenged you. I said, look, find a way to save some money every week. $10, $20, $100, whatever it is. Find a way to save some money. The same thing applies here. You need to start working on a plan. Well, George, I just simply can't afford it. Well, do you even really know what your true finances are? Because I'm going to ask this a lot on this show. And if you don't like being asked questions and me forcing you to kind of do some homework on your own, this might not be the show for you. I'm sorry, because I'm going to ask you if you've done the work. So Do you have a serious home budget? And I'm talking about written down. Now, we live in the modern age, so, Excel is a great place to do it. But if you want to do it the old-fashioned way and hand write it down, that's great, whatever it takes, right? But you got to have columns, right? You got to have income on one side, right? You got to have expenses on the other side. And you're going to have a balance at the bottom. Either there's going to be a plus or a minus. I make this much money, I spend this much, and every month I'm making a couple $100, or every month I'm losing a couple $100. And then if you really want to be fancy, start multiplying that over the next couple of years and just see how bad your debt's really going to get. But you got to start somewhere. So start with a simple home budget. Now, how does that solve anything? It doesn't. But it does at least get you on the path to having some sort of understanding of your finances. Okay? We need to be financially smart, financially educated. I'm not talking about accountant level. I'm talking about any person can do a basic home budget. Now, what do we do with it? Well, we start planning. The first parts of the plans are, what can we cut out of the expenses to try to turn the trend so that we can get some money at the end of the month so that we can save? That's the first thing. If that's not possible, then we need to increase how much money we make. Well, how are we going to do that? Well, you're going to have to make a change in your life. You're going to have to do something to add value to you that an employer will pay you for. And it may require some sort of job training, some form of education, a class. You might have to go get a credential of some sort or a license or something, but something that makes you more valuable. And look, maybe you just hate what you're doing and it's like, this is it. This is time for me to make a change. But this is how we get there. We first of all, we have to stop the negative speak, and we have to start inserting the positive speak, that I can get this done. I can be prosperous. And again, as I said before, finances, fine. Yes, we'll talk a lot about that. But this is also for those of you who, are looking for physical or spiritual prosperity. If you want spiritual prosperity, you need to start spending more time with God and reading your Bible. There are all kinds of things that we can do to make changes to get out of this negative mode and start doing things positively. So I've covered it as best as I can. I want you to understand that what you say is what you get. Start planning. Figure out how you can save a few bucks. We'll get to investing later. Just something as simple as a home budget, and start making a plan. Start reevaluating. If you want to build a life of prosperity, and let me just say this at the end here real quick. My goal for my family was to build a legacy for them. And I didn't start until I was in my late 30s. But I worked hard, and yes, pulled myself up by my bootstraps, dusted myself off, and continued to push forward until I got where I wanted to be. That's what you're going to have to do. Until next time, keep that train running down the tracks. Remember, that light at the end of the tunnel, it just might be you. I'll see you next time.
It's time to smash that like button and subscribe. To share or leave comments, log on to YouTube at the George Hayes Radio Podcast or visit us online at HayesNation.com.